Good morning. Thank you, Diane, for that lovely centering and peaceful prelude. I could watch the scales of anxiety falling from you all, or maybe just me. Well, welcome. If there's anybody who's visiting us, please be sure to sign the guest book in the back. And there are large print orders of service for anyone who needs that. There'll be coffee downstairs. We're having lemonade on the front porch all summer, but not today. So there's coffee and treats downstairs after the service. There are many announcements and so much going on at North Chapel these days. So be sure to look at your order of service, but also take a look at the website. I think Joanne does a fabulous job of keeping up with everything that's happening in a big, bold way with great pictures. And whenever I look at the website, I think, wow, it's a great church I belong to. So take a look at it sometime. I think nobody asked me to make an announcement, so let me just see if I've covered. We should silence our phones at this time, and
I've got one announcement.
Oh, Leon has an announcement.
Hi everyone, we're coming up on the time of General Assembly, which is the annual gathering of Unitarian Universalists from across the country. Every year it happens. It was in Pittsburgh last year. This year it was scheduled to be in a city I can't remember, but the contract fell through, so the whole thing is online. I'm gonna go, and I would, if there's anybody who's interested in being a part of it, it does cost money, but I'm willing to buy a ticket for the person who will want to be a part of it. So if you're interested in being part of General Assembly, which is our national gathering, please see me. Next year it's gonna be in Baltimore. So if you're super ambitious and you want to plan a trip to Baltimore next June, I'm going. We could probably travel together, but come and see me and I'll set you up. Thanks a lot. The General Assembly is June. It's not this weekend, but the following weekend. I'll come back with more specific dates. Or if you're interested, come see me and I'll give you the specifics.
Good morning, everyone. I'm taking advantage of the younger generation that I see here today. Thank you all for coming. We have this beautiful permaculture garden out here, and it is very much in need of some TLC. So next Sunday after church around 11:30, we're going to get in there and do a little weeding and do a little mulching and bring it back to its glory. So please bring a couple of hand trowels and maybe some rakes and some buckets to collect weeds and join us. Thank you.
Ann?
Yes.
Can I stay after church and be a part of this?
Yes, you can, Leon. That's terrific. Is there anybody else who'd like to join Leon?
Can I also bring lemonade for people to drink when it gets hot?
Oh, good plan. Thank you.
They conspired earlier, as you can see. Well, I think if that is it, I know there's we have a social justice committee that is now called the Justice Project, to sort of take it out of committee land into action. And that follows the service as quickly as possible. So go down and get your coffee and come back up to the parlors if you're in that committee. And let's sing our opening hymn, which is number 65. When I was looking earlier at the reflection, the blurb about the reflection that Leon is going to give later, I saw that he quoted a man named Frederick Buechner, Buechner, and Frederick Buechner, Leon says, reminds us the place God calls you to is the place where your deep gladness and the world's deep hunger meet. What a powerful place of connection. What a sacred rendezvous. How do you get there? The pathways are really clear, are rarely clear. How do we create the paths that lead us to where we are most deeply and most bravely called? And when I read that, I thought of a poem that many of you know well by Mary Oliver. And so I want to read that for opening words. It's called The Journey. One day you finally knew what you had to do and began, though the voices around you kept shouting their bad advice, though the whole house began to tremble, and you felt the old tug at your ankles. Mend my life, each voice cried. But you didn't stop. You knew what you had to do, though the wind pried with its stiff fingers at the very foundations, though their melancholy was terrible. It was already late enough, and a wild night, and the road full of fallen branches and stones. But little by little, as you left their voices behind, the stars began to burn through the sheets of clouds. And there was a new voice which you slowly recognized as your own, that kept you company as you strode deeper and deeper into the world, determined to do the only thing you could do, determined to save the only life you could save.
Please repeat after me. Since my house burned down, I have a much better view. I have a much better view of the mountains and the moon rising above. We're standing at a crossroads in many ways. We just don't know which way we're going to go with Israel and Gaza, in the Sudan, with the path of American democracy. We have to make a choice. And we're either going to trust ourselves or we won't. So it's up to us, and there's risk either way. What will we decide? You know, it doesn't always matter precisely what you choose sometimes. Of course, the general choices matter, and they matter exquisitely. But the specific pathways can lead to the same destination in different ways. What does always matter is that we make choices with joyful integrity. When we don't do this, it becomes really hard to learn the great lessons of life. Kent McCusick, my dear friend, taught me a great deal about life. Kent and I first met in the fall of 2006. We met atop of a sunny hill in Berkeley, California. We met on a hill that overlooks the San Francisco Bay. He and I and a modest group of other spiritual seekers from across the country had all chosen to move out west to go to seminary. When Kent and I met, we immediately befriended one another. We weren't best friends. We found ourselves in different circles, but we knew that we were beloved to one another. I was there for him when he met his dear James Perrin and fell in love. And he was there for me when my dear Samori ran away. Samori was my beautiful and perfect yellow Labrador retriever. She ran away in 2007 when she was 8 years old. She slipped her collar and she wandered down the streets of Oakland somewhere without her tags. It crushed me to the bone. I turned to dust. I was beside myself. Fortunately, we found her the next day. A neighbor had taken her in for the night, wanting to keep her safe. And that neighbor saw our signs the following mornings, the signs that we had posted before the dawn. I was so happy to see her that I broke down right there and then, and I cried. She was so relieved that she threw up all over the place. It was fantastic. We were both so happy to be with one another again. That day, those 24 hours were among the most harrowing of hours. It was a brand new kind of terrible. I can't really explain it. And I was lucky back then because I didn't have to explain it. My dear friends understood. Dear friends understand these things. Without words, they let you know that they will always be there for you, physically, whenever possible. Kent is one of those people. He was there for me in my time of trouble and in my hours of need. I knew that he would be when we first met in the fall of 2006. Seminary was awesome. It was challenging. It was filled with ups and downs. It was one of the most important things I've ever done. I learned so much from my dear friends. I learned so much from my colleagues. I learned so much about going massively and very quickly into debt. I learned so much from my teachers, Rebecca, Ibrahim, Dorsey, Gabriella, Patty, Yasir, David, the other David, Alma, Becky, everyone, no exceptions. I was so proud of that school. I still am, the Star King School for the Ministry. I felt like a closet evangelist for Star King back in the day. And Kent did too, and neither one of us knew how to let that show. One day we found a way though. We got a call, the one that we had been waiting for. Kent and I were asked if we would be willing to take a trip. There was going to be a fundraiser at the home of a wealthy donor in Monterey. Would we travel down and spend a night in a local hotel and speak from the heart about our passion for Star King? Of course. We accepted immediately. We were so thrilled to go. We packed up our bags. I packed up Samori. I wasn't letting her out of my sight. I grabbed a guitar, I grabbed the keys, and we took off driving down to Monterey. We got to the hotel and we parked in the front and we checked in at the front desk. Kent did the talking. He said, we're here checking in from the Star King School, one room for the two of us. And your name? Asked the young woman behind the counter with a smile. McCusick, Kent said, and we smiled at each other, very proud to be representing our seminary. And the woman behind the counter looked a little bit confused. She was unable to find our reservation. Can you give me the correct spelling of your last name? She asked politely. I think I might be making a mistake. And Kent answered her question impressively, spelling his own last name without a single mistake. He was very proud of himself, as I recall, but I was getting nervous. We didn't have a backup plan. Staying at this hotel was our only option. If she couldn't find the room, we'd be stuck. She tried again. Unfortunately, the outcome was the same, so I stepped in, fairly certain that I had absolutely nothing new to offer. I took the only chance I knew how to take, and I said, maybe the reservation is under my name, Dunkley. And I took pains to spell it out before she asked. And just like Kent, I too succeeded in spelling my own last name correctly. This time we struck gold. Eureka! She found the reservation. We were all so very glad. Even Samori was glad, and she can be hard to impress. Proudly, the woman behind the counter said, "Here it is, I have found it. One room with 2 queens?" she asked. Without missing a beat, Kent responded, "Yes, but he and I are only friends." Devilish smile. I've never seen a person turn as bright red as quickly as the woman behind the counter turned bright red. She was so embarrassed, and I couldn't stop laughing to save my life. None of us could. Even she was laughing. It was all in good fun. Kent McCusick died 5 days ago from a case of pulmonary fibrosis that was complicated by COVID. He is survived by his husband, James, and by me, and by a modest group of spiritual seekers who had moved out west to seminary in the fall of 2006. It feels like yesterday, and I wish it was yesterday. I miss my dear friend. So now I'm standing at a crossroads once again, and I don't know which way things are gonna go. When tragedy strikes, life is just like that. It presents its crossroads, and we have to make choices about how to move forward. We're either gonna trust ourselves or we won't. There's risk either way. How do we make the deepest decisions in life? How do we know how to do the right things? How does one listen to one's own heart? Kent taught me a great deal about life. He was a wonderful guide. Maybe the best thing that I learned from him was how to stay graceful at the crossroads, how to remain in peace and calm. Now, the Crossroads is an American myth about desperate blues artists who are willing to sell their souls to the devil in exchange for musical excellence. But this is not the Crossroads that I'm talking about. On the covers of your orders of service, there's a picture that was taken in Berkeley. It was taken at the corner of Grant Street and Channing Way. Grant Street in Berkeley is named after Ulysses S. Grant, the 18th President of the United States. He served in the aftermath of the American Civil War. And Channing Way was named after William Ellery Channing, the highly regarded Unitarian minister of the 19th century. Unitarianism and Universalism merge, but they don't merge until 1961. So if I called Channing a Unitarian Universalist, he would have not known what I was talking about. Once again, this is not the Crossroads that I'm talking about. I'm talking about the crossroads that was described, excuse me. That's Kent coming up. I'm talking about the crossroads that was described by Frederick Buechner. He said, the place God calls you to is a place where your deep gladness and the world's deep hunger meet. That's the crossroads that I mean. What would it be like to stand on the corner of gladness and hunger? How will we know which way we should go? How do we make that choice? And what informs the decision-making process? Will we be loving or fearful? Will we be guided by joy or by shyness? How many of you would describe yourselves as shy? Show of hands. It's not a trick question, but it is a trick answer because a lot of the shy people aren't going to raise their hands. There are shy people all over the place, but shyness is like a plague in Minnesota. I lived in St. Paul for a while and I learned this story. Imagine this moment at the prom. Go ahead, ask her to dance, my friend. The worst she can say is no. You're a great guy. You should just go for it. I don't understand. What's holding you back? That's what one friend said to another. These were old friends, good friends. They could talk to each other like this. They could be honest with one another. They could be frank. The other friend responded. He said, you know exactly what's holding me back. In fact, you said it yourself. I'm afraid of the worst thing that she could say. She could say no. Some men can be shy, painfully, impossibly shy. In fact, there's a joke in Minnesota about shy men. How can you tell if a Minnesota man wants to dance with a Minnesota woman? The Minnesota man is staring at the woman's shoes instead of staring at his own. Do you ever feel that kind of shy? 5 years after the end of World War II, the war that we used to call the big one, which was the war that came after the war that we called the war to end all wars. In 1950, Frederick Buechner wrote a book about a shy man, a main character named Tristram, in a book called A Long Day's Dying. It was Buechner's first attempt at writing a novel, and he succeeded. The book became a national bestseller. Carl Frederick Buechner himself was a gentle man. He was not particularly shy. He was born in 1926. He grew up in New York. He went to Princeton. He served in the military during the Second World War, and he wrote the first of his 32 books at the tender young age of 23. He married Judith in 1956, and when he was 30. And the two of them became snowbirds, splitting their time between Florida and Vermont. They lived over in Rupert, which is about 50 miles from here. Later in life, with no immediately apparent inspiration, Frederick Buechner became fascinated with religion. He felt called to become a minister. It wasn't a curiosity within him, it was a driving passion, a passion that was born out of an unhealed trauma, perhaps. He grew up in poverty and lost his father when he was young. Whatever the reason, there he was. Life had brought him to the crossroads, and he didn't know which way to go. Would he go to seminary or not? Life is like that sometimes. It presents us with challenges, and we have to choose. We have to make choices in life, or life will make those choices for us. We're either going to trust ourselves or we won't. There's risk either way. We should trust ourselves. We should stop looking at our shoes and ask ourselves to dance. The worst we can say is no. We're really good people. We should just go for it. What's holding us back? What's keeping us from making bold choices with joyful integrity? Buechner needed to make a bold choice. He needed to decide whether or not he wanted to become a Presbyterian minister. He sought guidance from the preacher at a nearby church. That preacher was thrilled of Buechner's interest, but ultimately dissuaded him. He discouraged him from going into the ministry, not too powerfully and not too forcefully, but with a great deal of respect. He said, it would be such a shame to lose a good writer for a mediocre preacher. It was sage advice, but it didn't work. Off he went to New York City to study at Union Theological Seminary of Columbia. He studied with the giants. He studied with the likes of Paul Tillich and Reinhold Niebuhr, two of the foremost theologians of the 20th century. He graduated and was ordained. He went into academia. He taught at Phillips Exeter Academy over in New Hampshire. He taught religion in a town of tough and stodgy New Englanders. Stodgy in the sense that most of them were more than skeptical about matters of faith. Some of them rejected religion outright. 18 years ago, in a televised interview, he was asked a good question. Why do New Englanders have so much trouble talking about faith? It's like talking about sex, he said. It's too private. It's too personal. Would you agree with Buechner on this point? It's different outside of New England. It's different in the Midwest, the land where shy men stare endlessly at other people's shoes. Buechner knew it was different out there because of his own experience. I taught at an evangelical college in the Midwest, he said, at a school called Wheaton, where they talk about their faith all the time and with such ease. I was sitting with a couple of kids once, and one of them said to the other, "What has Jesus been doing lately in your life?" "Oh my God," he said. If you said that in New England, even to churchgoers, they would just disappear with embarrassment. They would explode in horror, he said. And I find some kind of strange delight in picturing that. At Wheaton, talking openly about matters of faith was a part of the reality of their lives. They developed practices that allowed them to cherish their faith. Those practices have worn down pathways in the spiritual wilderness for others to follow. Part of this tradition, our tradition, part of Unitarian Universalism, is the practice of cherishing our doubt. When I was still living in St. Paul, still a shy man staring at my shoes, I met a brilliant composer named Elizabeth Alexander. I met her at church. She is UU. I met her at the church that I was serving at the time. She wrote a beautiful song, a daring song, a song called Cherish Your Doubt. Her words were these. Springtime without winter would be an entrance with a yawn. A dawn without the night would be a tedium of light. Reunion follows parting, rebirth follows death. Our songs of love have grown from the very seeds our doubt has sown. Without a doubt, our hearts and minds would never grow. Without a doubt, our dreams would have nowhere to go. Without a doubt, we'd never change the status quo. Yes, without a doubt, we'd be hanging on to notions that are better gone. So try to love the questions, those thorny questions. Trust your intuition and cherish your doubt. Deep expressions of faith wrestle and struggle and grapple and brawl and fight with the difficult edges of things, with the parts of religious traditions that no longer make sense to us, with the passageways that no longer lead us to where the soul most longs to be. When faith is practiced by those of us who no longer know how to wonder, it's so easy to get stuck in our old ways, to get stranded on the path that doesn't lead us anywhere. This can happen in any religion. Every faith faces this challenge. This is why it's so important that we in particular learn to cherish our doubt. And this is also why it is important that we in particular learn to cherish our faith. Because those two things need each other. I love the doubters, personally. And so did my dear friend Kent. And so did Frederick Buechner. He even said so himself. He said, the ones that I'm trying to reach are the people who wouldn't be caught dead going to church. They wouldn't touch religion with a 10-foot pole. Yet these people, deeply within themselves, like everybody, I think, they hunger for it. They hunger for some source of meaning and strength and comfort, something like that. They're the ones I try to reach, he said. Continuing, Buechner said that so many of us we're hungry to hear people talk honestly about faith, because so much of what we hear in church these days isn't really quite honest. He said there are people who are preaching more than they any longer have the passion for. And for them, preaching is just what comes with the job. When I go to church, he said, I feel I haven't been touched by people who themselves have not recently been touched by the reality of what they're talking about. Let me say that again. When I go to church, I feel I have not been touched by people who themselves have not recently been touched by the reality they're talking about. He said, so if someone comes along who is willing to make a fool out of himself, to talk honestly out of his own experience, her own experience, I think people find it refreshing. Maybe one day we'll find ourselves at the corner of Grant and Channing. Maybe one day we'll find ourselves at one of the crossroads in life. And if this happens, and it's likely to happen, maybe we'll see the beauty in it. Because the place that God calls us, the place that God calls us to, if we believe in God, is the place where our deep gladness and the world's deep hunger meet. That's a crossroads indeed. And when we get there, maybe we'll trust ourselves this time. Trust ourselves enough to go out dancing, deciding where we will go from here with joyful integrity. May it be so. Blessed be, and amen. Would you please open your teal hymnals for the singing of our closing song, Come and Go With Me, which is hymn number 1018. The teal hymnal's right next to you, my friend. Would you please rise as you are willing and able and join in the singing? Come and go with me to that land. Come and go with me to that land. Come and go with me to that land where I'm bound. Come and go with me to that land. Come and go with me to that land. Come and go with me to that land where I'm bound. There'll be freedom in that land. There'll be freedom in that land. There'll be freedom in that land where I'm bound. There'll be freedom in that land. There'll be freedom in that land. There'll be freedom in that land where I'm bound. There'll be justice in that land. There'll be justice in that land. There'll be justice in that land where I'm bound. There'll be justice in that land. There'll be justice in that land. There'll be justice in that land where I'm bound. There'll be singing in that land. There'll be singing in that land. There'll be singing in that land where I'm bound. There'll be singing in that land. There'll be singing in that land. There'll be singing in that land where I'm bound. Nice. Huzzah! As we enter into this day, this beautiful sunny day, let us go with joy and with justice, with a joyful integrity, holding all the people who've come before in a gentleness that's worthy of their smile, that's worthy of the best in them becoming possible, for that's who we are as we move forward in life. May it be so. Blessed be, and amen.